is incredible power in learning in a community, both power individually for the individual to be able to learn. And when you teach something, you learn so much more. But I think there is incredible power to changing the culture of your organization and of your team when you learn together, because you now have a common language and a common practice. And there is no other way of bringing a team together than creating a common language and a common practice.
Welcome to episode 191 of the industry's leading business podcast for fitness owners and managers. Each week, we invite business experts, coaches, authors, and owners from around the world to share their expert advice with you, the FBP family. This month's interviews are brought to you by our podcast partner, GymSales. GymSales gives your sales team the tools they need to capture, nurture, and convert new members. Visit gymsales.net to find out more. Hi everyone, and welcome along to the show. This week, our special guest is the CEO of Transformational Leadership Incorporated, Henna Inam. Henna is an executive coach to C-level leaders who are creating transformation within organizations. She helps them transform from within to create cultures of innovation, trust, and inclusion. Henna has more than 20 years of experience in marketing, finance, and sales, and has lived or worked in 7 countries across 4 continents. She's the author of Wired for Authenticity, which won Leadership Book of the Year in 2016. And as you're about to hear today, leadership really is the primary focus of my chat with Henna. Specifically during today's interview, we speak about the practices of an authentic leader. We chat about ways that we can build ourselves as authentic leaders. We talk about understanding our strengths and our saboteurs and how we can develop better self-awareness around those areas. Plus, we chat about how authenticity challenges are different for female leaders. I'm also really excited to share with you the news that Henna has been named as the keynote speaker for the Ursa Women's Leadership Summit coming up on Thursday, November the 8th in New Orleans. We're going to chat a little bit more about that later on in the show. And of course, for more information, head over to fitnessbusinesspodcast.com. We are about to transition to my interview with Henna, but first, here's a message from our podcast partner. GymSales allows you to plan, implement, and monitor a proactive sales strategy that's automated and uniform. You can give your sales team the tools they need to capture, nurture, and convert new members, which means it's easier than ever before to grow your member base. Make sure you head over to gymsales.net to find out more information. Enjoy this week's interview with my special guest, Henna Inam. It's such a pleasure today to be welcoming along our very special guest for today's interview. Henna, welcome and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Chantal. I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Now, I read in your bio something that you said, which was, I believe our fast-changing world needs each of us to be inspired leaders who make the world better for all. I absolutely love that quote, and I think it's such a beautiful place to actually start our interview today. And I was hoping that you can share with us what the qualities are of an authentic leader.
Yeah, so I'll start off by talking about my book. It's called Wired for Authenticity. I wrote it about 3 years ago. And what it documents is my own journey to authenticity and my own challenges with authenticity, particularly as a female working in fairly male-dominated environments. In my view, look, I don't know that there are qualities as such of an authentic leader. I like to think of it as the 7 practices of authentic leadership that I talk about in my book. And the reason why I call it practices is because I feel like we as leaders are always growing and the world around us is constantly changing. And qualities feels like it's you either, this or you're not. Whereas practices is something that you can always do. You can always practice. You fall off the bandwagon. It's sort of like my exercise routine. I fall off and then, you get back on. That's all what it is to it, right? And so for me, it's about the practice. It's not the quality. There's nothing fixed about it. So I can share with you what are the 7 practices. The first practice, and I think you'll like this one, is called Befriend Your Body. Mm-hmm. And that's one where it's all really about discovering who you are through your body by being in touch with your 5 senses and figuring out what's happening in the present moment in your body so that you can respond in a much more agile way to what's happening. The second practice is called Stay Curious, and it's about not having a fixed mindset, but actually being curious about what's going on around you, what's going on within you, and learning how you can best serve in that moment where you are versus from a fixed mindset. The third is about letting go. So it's in order for us to really return to our authenticity, we have to let go of all the things that we're not, that we think we should be. And there's a whole list of things that I talk about in my book about some of the practices around letting go. The fourth practice is about give yourself an A. And an A is not as much as an accolade, but really truly accepting yourself. The A stands for acceptance. It's about accepting and appreciating yourself completely, including your flaws, and fully starting from that place. And then, aspiring to something that you want to create for yourself that is part of the values that you have. That's the fourth one. The fifth one is about choosing be before do. So what this is about is you get to choose in the moment who you want to be, operating from everything that you have so that you can be more flexible and agile, but at the same time operating from the values and the core and the sense of purpose that you bring. The sixth one is about facing the dragon. It's about facing your fears and having courage. And the seventh one is dance with the dream. And this is really about being able to dance with what's important to you, finding that sense of purpose, finding the ways in which you will be most energized, fulfilled, and alive.
Henna, I'm sitting here at the moment with a big smile on my face because I feel like there is so much relevance in those 7 practices that you just talked about. And I'm quite certain that many members of the FBP family are probably feeling the same way as I am at the moment, just being able to relate to so many of those areas. And the first one that you started off with, which I believe was Befriend Your Body. I actually read something that you said, which I thought was really interesting and very relevant for the fitness industry. And you said, inauthenticity causes stress in our bodies, which I thought was really interesting because I think when, in a lot of leadership conversations that I've had, traditionally we talk very much about the business side of leadership, but you've obviously have a link between the business and the body and the spiritual side. Can you help us understand that particular one a little bit more?
Sure. So I think, look, in our Western world, and particularly in our very fast-changing world, in a corporate and business environment, a lot of us can tend to be in our heads a lot because it requires analysis. It requires thinking. We're sitting in front of a computer now, in front of any device, almost 24/7. So we're in this kind of distracted place where we're always thinking about something either that happened in the past or something that will happen in the future, or idea of something, or fearing something that might happen. And I feel like the best way to lead is actually leading from being fully present in our bodies. I have personally experienced, as I have developed through my mindfulness practice, greater body awareness. I am much more in tune with my own emotions, what's happening with me now. What am I feeling? Where am I feeling some tension? And my entire body is able to listen and bring that same sense of awareness of the present moment to any conversation or interaction or conflict that I'm having with another individual. And I'm able to be much more present to what's happening with them in this conversation rather than, operate from preconceived notions about what should happen or how they are in terms of, a judgment about them. And I find that when I do that, oh my God, it is transformative for me. It is transformative for them, and it's transformative for the relationship. Does any of that make sense?
It makes total sense. And, as you were talking through that, what was in my mind is, as fitness professionals, such a large part of our business are the relationships that we have, and such a large part of what we do and what makes a difference in those relationships is how we engage and how we listen to the people within our teams, but also our customers within our businesses. So I think
absolutely,
so I think that there's just an incredible alignment with the Befriend Your Body practice that you talk about and our industry. Henna, let's bring this back to Wired for Authenticity and those 7 practices overall that you talk about, because I know that so many of our listeners are interested to know, how they can actually develop as an authentic leader and work on those practices as you talk about. So can you share with us any tips or ways that we can actually build ourselves and do those practices that you talk about to develop ourselves as authentic leaders?
So, the first place, of course, is to buy the book and read it.
First and foremost. And I should just jump in there and say there will be a link in the show notes, everyone. So make sure you jump over to fitnessbusinesspodcast.com and we'll put a direct link in there for the book.
Yeah, and the book, I would say there's a lot of other resources that come when you get the book, or even actually if you don't get the book, there is, if you go on to my website, and I'll ask Chantal if you can just add that link, there is a 52-week, 1 practice a week that you can sign up for under the resources tab on my website. And each week you'll get 1 simple practice that keeps you in practice. And the reason why is it is really about practice. It's about getting to know yourself in terms of growing your own self-awareness. And self-awareness is really key to any leadership. You start with leading and knowing yourself before you move on to, obviously as your organization grows and the people that you work with grows, leading others. So there's 52 weeks of 1 simple tool a week. I would really recommend that you find a buddy, just like you would an exercise buddy, or find a community, or there's also a tool where if you want to bring a group of people together and read the book together, there's like a discussion guide. So what I wanted to do is make available a bunch of tools where people can actually get into the practice.
I love that you mentioned that about getting together with a buddy or getting a team together, because one of the things that we've spoken about on the show today is having a learning piece for your team. So leaders within a fitness business actually creating a learning practice within their team. And I would imagine that using this 52-week tool that you have, they could actually bring that into their weekly team meetings. And together as a team, they can actually work on that and bounce off each other and learn together.
I think, there is incredible power in learning in a community, both power individually for the individual to be able to learn. And when you teach something, you learn so much more. But I think there is incredible power to changing the culture of your organization and of your team when you learn together, because you now have a common language and a common practice. And there is no other way of bringing a team together than creating a common language and a common practice so that the team together gets to know one another better. There's a lot of ways in which you can share and grow in your self-awareness and be able to get feedback from other team members. And my personal belief is that, we spend 12 to 14 hours a day, many of us at work, we're connected with our workplace. And, it's probably the biggest endeavor that we take on in our adult lives. And, if we can't use our work to self-actualize, what a lost opportunity for us as a human race.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, Hannah, you talk about the importance of understanding our strengths and our saboteurs. Can you help us understand a couple of ways that we can actually develop better self-awareness around those areas?
So there's a couple of ways that I would recommend. One that we just talked about, which is, hey, practice in your team. Mm-hmm. The second is have mentors and friends who can speak truth to you. In many of our organizations, we can tend to have some formal relationships that preclude, speaking truth to one another, or people have fear of conflict or want to be liked, and sometimes that precludes us from being most helpful to others, which is to share truth with, both on terms of your strengths as well as your opportunities for development. So asking for feedback is really important. There's lots of assessments out there, and some of them actually I have a whole tab, and there's a free assessment that people can do from my website called the Authenticity Assessment. So there's lots of assessments out there that people can do to help get to know themselves better. And then one of my favorites is the practice of mindfulness. And for me, that is amazing because you start to get to a place where you can observe yourself and your impact on others. And being able to observe that and notice that without judgment is a beautiful practice to grow your self-awareness.
Thank you for sharing those with us, Hannah. Now, I know that a lot of work that you do with female leaders, and of course you're the organiser for the TEDx Women's events as well. Can you help us understand how the authenticity challenges are different for female leaders?
Yes. So in the research that I did for the book, there are definitely challenges that are different. As I spoke with female leaders, first, women leaders who particularly work in highly male-dominated cultures or environments tend to feel like they have to act a certain way in order to be perceived as professional or to be perceived as promotable. So that's one area of challenge, is that they try to emulate either behavior of their male leaders or other kinds of behavior. That's the first challenge. I think the second challenge and this is a really thin line that women often need to walk, is that the perceptions of what a good leader is are often very different from the perception of and expectations of what women must do. So a good leader is somebody who takes initiative, Western definitions, right? Mm-hmm. So takes initiative, or a good leader is somebody who is strategic or assertive or decisive. And the challenge is when women often act in those ways, those qualities can tend to undermine the expectation that we have of women, which is collaborative and nurturing and softer. And so women have to really walk this thin line that is right in the middle, where they're, they have to be both collaborative, but they also have to be assertive in order to be perceived as a leader. Does that make sense?
It does, and it sounds quite challenging. I mean, I would love if you could to share with us perhaps an example of, it might be a female leader in the public eye that we could recognise, or someone that you have worked with over the years, an example of a female leader who has been able to successfully find that balance that you're talking about.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think, look, we definitely in the public eye, there's the example of Margaret Thatcher, right? Mm-hmm. Who was often perceived as very male in the way that she showed up, and was often very criticized for that. So she erred on the side of being, very outspoken, very assertive, but was seen as very aggressive. I think that there are other leaders that are, the author of Lean In, for instance, is somebody who I think is incredibly powerful, and I think also has the ability to both be obviously very effective in what she does. So this is Sheryl Sandberg I'm talking about.
I was just Googling when you said that.
Yeah. So Sheryl Sandberg has, done the whole Lean In movement. And I feel like she does a good job of balancing being very assertive in the sense of having an impact, but also not losing her femininity. And I think the way that women are able to do that successfully, and when women are able to do that successfully, they're actually able to be very powerful. In the case of Sheryl Sandberg, obviously she's seen as one of the most powerful women and has made an incredible impact.
I think that this is such an interesting area, and if we had longer, we would dive into a little bit more. But I think it also gives us a perfect segue to chat about the Ursa Women's Leadership Summit, because for any of our listeners that don't already know, Henna is actually the keynote speaker for the Ursa Women's Leadership Summit that is happening at the Athletic Business Show this November. So, Henna, do you want to just give us a brief overview about the keynote topic that you're going to be focusing on?
Yeah, so I will be talking about the power of purpose and finding a way to be purposeful in the workplace. More and more meaning and purpose are key drivers of the employee experience in the workplace, and also a key driver of well-being in the workplace. So I will be talking about, and in fact, we'll take us through an exercise around discovering your sense of purpose and finding it in the way that you work.
That is wonderful. Well, I'm really looking forward to the Ursa Women's Leadership Summit, Henna, and hearing you speak.
I am too.
It's going to be fabulous. We've got an amazing group of women coming along, and for anyone that would like more information on that, and of course I will put a direct link in today's show notes so that you can check out everything that's happening. And as I said, Henna's going to be starting off the day with her keynote, which is going to be phenomenal. I cannot wait for that. So look, we have covered a broad range of topics for today, and I just want to remind everyone that I will put the link for Henna's book, Wired for Authenticity, in today's show notes, along with your website link. Are there any last messages that you'd like to leave with our listeners today, Henna?
Well, I would love to see everybody at the Women's Leadership Conference. I wish everybody tremendously fulfilling and purposeful week ahead. And I hope to connect with you either at the conference, or please connect with me on LinkedIn or through my website. I'd love to hear any questions you have. If you want to send me some advanced questions, that would be amazing. I'd love to hear and make sure that I can really frame up my talk in a way that is really useful for the people that will be there.
That is amazing. Well, Henna, I want to thank you so much for being incredibly generous with your time and for joining us today and for talking us through those 7 practices. And once again, thank you very, very much for being a guest on the Fitness Business Podcast.
Oh, absolutely, Chantal. It was a pleasure connecting with you, and I look forward to meeting you.
Team Rockstar Fit is an award-winning mastermind team that helps fit pros lead happy and balanced lives. Get mentoring and support. Learn how to grow your business online with Beachbody. You can apply for a free consultation today at teamrockstarfit.com.
Precor Quickfire 5.
This week's Precor Quickfire 5 guest is the founder and CEO of Gym Guys, Josh York. As you're about to hear, my dogs were trying to get a little bit of attention at the start of this interview, so my apologies for the added sound effects during my introduction to Josh. Here is this week's Precor Quickfire 5 with Josh York. It's such a pleasure to be welcoming along today's guest. Josh, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you having me.
I am really excited to have you here today, and we're going to kick things off with the Precor Quickfire 5. So tell everyone, why do you do what you do?
It's quite simple. Well, why we do what we do is because we love changing people's lives. And at the end of the day, I'm not just talking about changing people's lives from the fitness side. I'm talking about changing people's lives from the entrepreneurial side too. So we come at it from both angles, and it's very important to us to make a difference, and that's what we do. And I could tell you thousands and thousands of stories. Some of them are so crazy that I will literally get chills here on the spot of how we help people. And that's why we do what we do.
It makes you the perfect guest for our show. And what's one ritual that helps you become better at what you do?
Well, I'm a very intense individual. I do not drink coffee. Right now we're on New York time at 7:30 at night. I've been up since 3 o'clock. I will go home, get my little man into the bath, put my baby to sleep. Then I will get up at 3 o'clock again and do it all over. But the first thing that starts is my workout. So I never miss a workout. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, consistency is key. And if you want to have success with anything in life, you have to be consistent. And I will never miss a workout. And that's where it starts.
Workout is a great ritual. And are there any apps or systems that you rely on, that you use to stay in control of your workload?
I do. And I'm going to flip this, because I'm not going to say a typical answer. It's going to be a music platform, and it's called Spotify. I'm all about mindset, and my music needs to get me focused. And I'm very big into music, and music really sets my tone. And everything also comes down to mindset, because you got to be laser focused. You got to be able to take the hits. You got to be able to dodge them as well, So it's very important. And that platform is really something for me that gets me into that place.
Great answer. And are there any books or podcasts or blogs that you would recommend, and why?
I would say the best book, in my opinion, is Shoe Dog by Phil Knight, a story of Nike. And, the problem is when people think about success, I've been doing this over a decade, and we are right now the fastest growing franchise brand in the world, which is super exciting. And we've done some magical things, but it wasn't always like that. There was lots of challenges. When you think of someone who's successful, what people usually do is they look at the finished product. They don't look at what it took to get there. And Shoe Dog really tells you the story of Nike, which is the craziest story you will ever hear. And if I could literally sit down and have dinner with one individual, it'd be Phil Knight, because the amount of respect I have for this guy is like, it is so high. It's unbelievable. And it's just a very, very inspiring book. And, entrepreneurship can be very lonely, and people don't seem to understand that. But when you can obviously relate to other people when they've been through struggles and challenges, because I can tell you some stories that will give you instant ulcers right here on this podcast of what I've done to get to where we are today. So that is why I love that book.
That's a great recommendation. And I love what you said about how important understanding the journey is. And we'll dive into some of that during your main interview next week. So perhaps that's the perfect segue to my last question, which is give us a quick bit of an insight into what we're going to be speaking about during your main interview.
So pretty much what we're going to talk about is how do you make the impossible possible? And I'm going to literally touch on that because, a lot of people don't think things are possible, and anything is possible, because whatever you believe you can achieve, it's just quite simple, but you got to be ready to rock and roll. If you're not ready to rock and roll, and you're not ready to bring it, and you're not be able to focus and take the challenges and handle that, you're not going to be successful. But you can do anything you want, anything in life. You just got to just work at it. And that's what we're going to talk about.
I'm super excited to have you on the main show next week. So Josh, thank you for joining us today for the Precor Quickfire 5.
My pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Tribe, if you haven't explored a functional training space for your gym, then now is the time. With Queenex Functional Training by Precor, there is a unit to fit every space. Plus, education is included to ensure that training is delivered with confidence. You need to jump online and check this out right now. Go to precor.com/fitness business podcast.
Before we finish up today, a reminder that all the resources, the links and a transcript for today's show can be found at fitnessbusinesspodcast.com. Thank you to our foundation partner, Active Management. Our most downloaded shows relate to lead generation. So Active Management have an awesome free checklist for improving what is possibly your most viewed page on your website. All you need to do is grab it at fitnessbusinesspodcast.com/active. Thank you for joining me for another week of the show. I look forward to seeing you next week. And remember, what you leave behind is not what's engraved in stone monuments, but what is woven into the lives of others.